Thank you so much for being with us. So the first question I have for you is, climate change is affecting economies, businesses and society around the world. What do you see as the major threats for your organizations?
Climate change matters, it is important, it affects all of us, including central banks. From our perspective, the most important is to understand how it affects our mandate. And so what do I think about? What are the risks we're looking at? There are really three areas. It's how do climate risk affect important economic variables, economic growth, prices, inflation. How do climate risk affect potentially financial stability, for instance, and the ability of the financial system to absorb risk that come from climate change. And I also worry about how climate change may affect the way we manage our very large portfolio of reserves.
Brilliant. So that leads me to my next question. What are the concrete steps that your organization has taken to drive that transition?
So we're a central bank. So we do not have a mandate to drive change and to promote transition towards the climate change. Our mandate is really a mandate of financial and monetary stability. Our goal is to maintain the confidence in the purchasing power of money, in price stability. Now, but we do have quite a bit to do. Our responsibility is to understand any change in the landscape of risk that is pertinent to our mandate. That includes changes in climate risk. And that is something we do. So what do? We look into how do we need, and if so, how do we need to change our macro models? What are the new tools? What is the new methodology? What is the new data? Do we have it? And how do we get access to the knowledge to do those changes? Similarly, from financial stability, what kind of measures do we need to do to make sure we can monitor the changes, how the financial stability may be affected? For instance, how can we conduct a climate-related stress test? And on our balance sheet, we have a very much risk-based approach. So we need to understand the risk, we need to understand how to manage the risk in our portfolio, and that is really what we do.
Thank you very much. Now, more focusing on E4S, our mission is to build bridges between academia, businesses, governments, society. How do you see an organization like ours supporting your mission and vice versa?
E4S has a very important mission. And I believe it contributes in many different ways, but I see two that are particularly interesting also for us. One is your mission is to foster sound, fact-based analysis. And that is incredibly important because without that, you cannot create the basis for good informed dialogue, an exchange of ideas, where we are also able to contribute. We want to be able to discuss on the relevant issues, to understand how the risk, the mechanism, the transmission mechanism. So this is one way in which E4S is important. The other one, which I find particularly interesting, is your desire not only to create good analysis, but to create a link to be able to explain it, to communicate it to the wider public. And that is incredibly important because ultimately, many of the risks can only be addressed with instruments that will require a broad consensus. It requires a political dialogue. And this political dialogue needs to take place. It needs to take place ideally on an informed basis. And I think this is where E4S can really contribute and has a very important role to play.
Thank you so much.